My name is Ethan Carter, and I'm 34 years old, sitting in my dusty pickup truck at the edge of Millbrook, Texas, watching the sun beat down on a town I haven't seen in over a decade. Rosie, my rescue dog, shifts in the passenger seat, her brown eyes reflecting the same unease I feel churning in my stomach. The sweet scent of mesquite mingles with the smell of hot asphalt and something else I can't quite place. Progress, maybe, or the ghost of old dreams finally taking root. I never thought I'd come back here. This place, with its wide streets and stubborn pride, was supposed to be a chapter I'd closed forever. But here I am, drawn back by obligation and a mother's voice over the phone, soft and pleading. "It's Thanksgiving, Ethan. It's been too long." Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. The town looks different, not transformed, but touched by change. New storefronts line Main Street, where boarded-up windows used to stare back like empty eyes. There's a small park where the old gas station used to rot, complete with walking trails and a pavilion that gleams in the afternoon light. A bronze plaque catches my eye from across the street, and I squint to read it. Millbrook Revitalization Project, funded by Federal Rural Development Grant. Something tight loosens in my chest. I know that grant. I wrote the proposal that secured it, though nobody here knows that. Rosie whimpers softly, sensing my tension. I reach over and scratch behind her ears, the familiar gesture grounding me. She's been with me through 3 years of late nights and early mornings, through the slow, methodical work of rebuilding small towns from the inside out. She's never seen where I come from, never met the people who shaped me into someone who needed to leave. "We'll be fine, girl," I tell her, though my voice wavers. "Just a few days." The house on Elm Street looks exactly the same. White clapboard siding, green shutters, a front porch that sags slightly on the left side. Dad's old Ford sits in the driveway, polished to a shine that speaks of too much time and too little purpose. I park behind it and sit for a moment, watching the curtains twitch in the front window. Moo! Before I can change my mind, the front door opens. Mom appears, her hair more silver than brown now, wearing the same floral apron she's had since I was in high school. Her smile is too bright, too wide, the kind that tries to bridge a decade of distance with pure determination. "Ethan," she calls, hurrying down the porch steps, "you made it." I climb out of the truck, my legs stiff from the 6-hour drive from Austin. She wraps me in a hug that smells like vanilla and regret, holding on a beat too long. "You look good," she says, stepping back to study my face. "Tired, but good." "Thanks, Mom." I glance toward the house. "Is Dad?" "He's inside, watching the game." Her voice carries a warning I remember from childhood. Well, you know how he is." I nod, understanding perfectly. Some things never change, even when everything else does. The next morning, I wake before dawn to the sound of Rosie's gentle breathing and the distant hum of 18-wheelers on the highway. The guest room feels smaller than I remember, stuffed with Mom's quilting supplies and Dad's old coaching trophies. Through the thin walls, I can hear him moving around the kitchen, his morning routine unchanged after all these years. Coffee first, then the weather report, then 20 minutes of muttering about whatever's wrong with the world today. I slip out quietly with Rosie, needing to walk before the house fills with the weight of unspoken words. The morning air is crisp, carrying the scent of wood smoke and the faint sweetness of late blooming wildflowers. We head toward downtown, my feet following paths I once knew by heart. The changes are more striking in daylight. The old Miller's Five and Dime has been transformed into a coffee shop with hand-painted signs and mason jar lights. Next door, where the pawn shop used to be, there's now a small gallery featuring local artists. A young woman with purple hair waters plants outside a boutique that sells organic soaps and candles. This isn't the Millbrook I left. This is the Millbrook I once dreamed it could become. Ethan Carter? I turn to find a tall man in coveralls approaching, his face familiar despite the years. Tyler Bennett, star quarterback from our high school class, now with graying temples and oil-stained hands. He stops a few feet away, studying me with the same intense focus he once brought to reading defensive plays. "I'll be damned," he says, breaking into a grin. "Look what the cat dragged in." "Hey, Tyler." I extend my hand and he shakes it firmly. "Heard you stayed in town. Someone had to keep the lights on." He gestures toward a garage across the street. Bennett's Auto Repair, the sign freshly painted. "Took over from Old Man Peterson when he retired. What about you?" "Mom said you were doing some kind of government work." "Non-profit," I correct. "Rural development. Infrastructure projects, mainly." Tyler's expression shifts, becoming more serious. "No kidding. That's actually pretty cool. We've had some good luck with grants lately. New park. Business district improvements. First time this place has felt alive in decades." I nod, keeping my expression neutral. "I noticed. It looks great." "Yeah, well," he kicks at a loose piece of gravel. "I gotta be honest with you, man. Back in school, I thought you were kind of, I don't know, soft, I guess. All that talk about planning and community building. I figured you'd crash and burn out there in the real world." His words sting, but there's something genuine in his voice, almost apologetic. "Turns out I was wrong," he continues. "Takes guts to stick with something you believe in, even when people don't get it. I respect that now." Rosie wanders over to sniff at Tyler's boots, and he reaches down to pet her. "Beautiful dog. What's her story?" "Rescue," I say simply. "She keeps me grounded." Tyler straightens, glancing around at the bustling street. "You know, Javier Morales is running for re-election. He's the one who brought most of these changes to town. Good man. We need more folks like him, and like you, I suppose." The comment hangs in the air as I watch people going about their morning routines, shopping at businesses that exist because of work I did from a desk 600 miles away. I feel proud and invisible at the same time, like a ghost haunting his own success. By 4 o'clock, the house fills with the familiar chaos of family gathering. Mom has been cooking since dawn, her cheeks flushed from the heat of the oven and the weight of her own expectations. The dining room table, extended with 2 card tables and covered in her good lace tablecloth, groans under the weight of turkey, stuffing, green bean casserole, and 3 different kinds of pie. Dad emerges from his recliner for the first time all day, wearing his good shirt, the blue one Mom bought him last Christmas that he complained was too fancy. He nods at me briefly, the gesture carrying all the warmth of a business handshake, then busies himself arranging chairs and making sure everyone knows where to sit. The guests arrive in waves. Aunt Clara and Uncle Bob, who still think the internet is a fad. My cousin Jacob and his wife Sarah, fresh from their new house in the suburbs of Dallas. The Hendersons from next door, who've been coming to our Thanksgiving table for 15 years. Mrs. Patterson, the widow who taught Sunday school when I was 8 and still calls me Little Ethan, despite the fact that I'm now taller than her husband ever was. I position myself at the far end of the table, Rosie lying quietly at my feet under the watchful eye of everyone who's wondering why I brought a dog to dinner. The conversations flow around me like water around a stone, talk of harvest prices, high school football scores, and who's having babies or getting divorced. "So, Ethan," Jacob says, cutting into his turkey with surgical precision, "Mom says you're working for the government now." "Non-profit," I correct for the second time today. "We focus on rural development projects, grant writing, infrastructure planning, community organizing." Jacob nods politely, but I can see the confusion in his eyes. In his world, success is measured in quarterly reports and company trucks. That's interesting. Good benefits? "It's not about the benefits," I say, trying to keep my voice even. "It's about making a difference, helping communities that have been forgotten." Dad snorts from his end of the table. "Forgotten, my ass. Some places just need to pull themselves up by their bootstraps instead of waiting for handouts." The table goes quiet, except for the sound of silverware against china. Mom's smile grows more strained, her eyes darting between Dad and me like she's watching a tennis match. It's not handouts, Dad. It's investment. When you give communities the tools they need. Tools? Dad interrupts, his voice rising slightly. You know what tools I had when I was your age? These. He holds up his hands, calloused from 30 years of coaching and weekend carpentry. Work. Real work. Not sitting in some office pushing papers and telling people what they need. Mrs. Patterson clears her throat delicately. Dennis, the boy's just trying to help people. Help, Dad repeats like it's a dirty word. Jacob here. He's helping people. Employs 47 drivers. Keeps families fed. That's success. That's making a difference. Jacob shifts uncomfortably in his chair, obviously wishing he'd never brought up the subject. Sarah reaches for his hand under the table. Actually, I say, my voice steadier than I feel, some of my work has helped this town. That new park downtown, the business district improvements, those came from grants Oh, honey, Mom interrupts quickly, her peacemaker instincts kicking in. Let's not talk work at the table. This is family time. But Dad's eyes are fixed on me now, and I can see the familiar fire building behind them. You think you helped this town. Boy, you left this place in your rearview mirror and never looked back. The words hang in the air like smoke from a blown-out candle. I feel Rosie shift under the table, pressing closer to my leg as if she can sense the storm building. Around us, conversations have died completely. Even Uncle Bob, who could sleep through a tornado, is paying attention now. Me. I never looked back? I repeat, my voice careful and measured. Dad, I've spent the last 10 years working to help places exactly like Millbrook. Small towns that... Bullshit. The word cuts through the dining room like a blade. Mom gasps, her hand flying to her chest. Mrs. Patterson's fork clatters against her plate. Dennis, Mom whispers, but he's not listening to her anymore. His attention is fixed on me with laser intensity, the same look he used to give players who fumbled during the fourth quarter. Nye. You think what you do matters? He leans forward in his chair, his face flushed red above his collar. Sitting in some air-conditioned office, writing pretty letters, begging the government for money? That's not work, son. That's welfare with a college degree. Dad, please, I say, but I can feel my own anger starting to rise, hot and familiar in my chest. If you'd just listen. Listen to what? More excuses about why you're too good for this place? Too smart for the rest of us? Jacob tries to intervene. Uncle Dennis, maybe we should. No. Dad's voice booms across the table. This boy needs to hear some truth. You know what real success looks like, Ethan? It looks like Jacob here. Built something with his own hands, employs people, makes a profit. It looks like staying and fighting instead of running away the first chance you get. Telling and preparing this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story. The room feels like it's shrinking around me. I can hear my heartbeat in my ears, can feel years of buried hurt and frustration clawing their way to the surface. I didn't run away. I left to build something meaningful. Meaningful! Dad laughs, but there's no humor in it. You call begging for handouts meaningful? You call abandoning your family meaningful? I call helping communities rebuild themselves meaningful, yes. My voice is rising now despite my efforts to stay calm. I call securing federal funding that brings jobs and hope to dying towns meaningful. You call it whatever you want. Dad interrupts, standing up so fast his chair scrapes against the hardwood floor. But I'll tell you what it really is. It's failure dressed up in fancy words. You're 34 years old, boy, and you've never built anything real, never made anything last. You're not successful, and you never will be. The words hit me like a physical blow. Around the table, faces stare at me with mixtures of embarrassment, pity, and shock. Sarah's eyes are wide. Mrs. Patterson looks like she might cry. Mom's mouth opens and closes soundlessly, like a fish gasping for air. That federal grant that built the new park, I say quietly, my voice steadier than I feel. The one that brought new businesses to Main Street? The infrastructure improvements that saved the downtown district? I wrote those proposals. My organization secured that funding. Dad's expression doesn't change. Prove it. I reach for my phone, but before I can pull up any documentation, he's shaking his head. Doesn't matter anyway, he says, his voice cold and final. Even if that's true, you still left. You still turned your back on this family, on this town. Real success is about loyalty, about staying and fighting. You don't have either. I stand up slowly, my legs unsteady. Rosie rises with me, her warm presence the only thing keeping me grounded. I'm done. That's right, Dad calls after me as I walk toward the door. Run away again. It's what you do best. I spend the night in my truck at Miller's Overlook, the same spot where kids used to come to drink beer and pretend they were ready for the world beyond the county line. Rosie curls up on the passenger seat while I stare out at the lights of Millbrook spread below us like scattered stars. The town looks peaceful from this distance, almost beautiful, and I find myself wondering if I should just drive away now and never look back. My phone buzzes with text messages. Mom apologizing, Jacob saying Dad was out of line, even Tyler asking if I'm okay. I don't answer any of them. What would I say? That 34 years later, I'm still the same kid getting torn down at the dinner table? That all my degrees and accomplishments mean nothing when measured against a father's disappointment? Around 7 in the morning, a familiar black SUV pulls up beside my truck. Mayor Javier Morales steps out, looking perfectly pressed despite the early hour. He was 2 years behind me in school, but even then he had the kind of quiet confidence that made you pay attention when he spoke. Thought I might find you here, he says, approaching my open window. Mind if I join you? I gesture toward the tailgate, and we sit in comfortable silence for a moment, watching the sun climb over the eastern hills. Javier looks older than his 32 years, his black hair touched with premature gray, but his eyes are as sharp as ever. Heard you had some family drama last night, he says eventually. Word travels fast in a small town. It does. He pauses, choosing his words carefully. Ethan, I need to tell you something. I know who you are. I know what you've done for this town. My stomach tightens. What do you mean? Carter Foundation for Rural Development, your nonprofit. I've been tracking federal grants for 3 years, trying to understand how we got so lucky. Took some digging, but I found the connection. Every major improvement we've made, the park, the business district revitalization, the infrastructure upgrades, they all trace back to proposals written by your organization. I stare at him, unsure whether to deny it or run. I don't know what you're talking about. Yes, you do. His voice is gentle but firm. You've been quietly rebuilding your hometown from 600 miles away. The question is why you never told anyone. Rosie jumps down from the truck and wanders over to sniff at Javier's shoes. He reaches down to pet her, never breaking eye contact with me. Because it wasn't about recognition, I say finally. It was about doing what needed to be done. Exactly. Javier stands up, brushing dust off his pants. Which is why I need your help. I'm running for re-election next month, and I'm facing some serious opposition. Old guard types who think change is the enemy. They want to go back to the way things were. No growth, no investment, no hope. What does that have to do with me? I'm holding a town hall next week. Public forum on future development. I want you to speak. I want you to tell people who you are and what you've accomplished. Not to embarrass anyone, but to show them what real leadership looks like. The idea terrifies me. Standing up in front of the people who watched me get humiliated, admitting that the boy they dismissed has been their silent benefactor all along. Javier, I don't think. This town is at a crossroads, Ethan. We can keep moving forward, or we can slide back into the past. Your voice could make the difference. He hands me a business card with the town hall details. Think about it, but don't think too long. Some chances don't come twice. I spend the next 2 days walking. Rosie and I trace every street, every back alley, every forgotten corner of Millbrook, as if I'm trying to memorize the place before it disappears entirely. Or maybe I'm trying to understand how the boy who left here became the man I am now, and whether that transformation was worth the cost. The new park draws me back again and again. Children play on equipment that didn't exist when I was young, their laughter echoing off trees I helped plant through careful budget allocations and environmental impact studies. An elderly man sits on one of the benches, reading a newspaper in the morning sun. I recognize him as Emmett Vasquez, who lost his leg in Vietnam and spent decades watching this town slowly die around him. "Beautiful morning," he says as I pass by for the third time. "Yes, sir, it is." "You're Dennis Carter's boy, aren't you? The one who went off to college?" I nod, bracing myself for another lecture about abandoning family. "Good for you," he says instead. "This place has come alive again these past few years. Feels like somewhere worth living for the first time in decades. Takes vision to build something like this." His words hit me harder than my father's anger. I mumble something about needing to get going and hurry away before he can see the tears in my eyes. Babad. From the park, my feet carry me to the high school football stadium, the temple of my father's world. The bleachers look smaller than I remember, weathered aluminum seats that once held the dreams and frustrations of an entire community. I climb to the top row and sit where I used to hide during games, the place where Dennis Carter's sun was supposed to shine but never did. I remember being 14, standing on the sideline in shoulder pads that felt like they weighed 100 pounds, watching my father pace the sideline and bark instructions I could never quite follow fast enough. "Move your feet, Carter. Keep your head up. You're thinking too much." But thinking was all I knew how to do. While other boys saw gaps in the defense, I saw patterns in community development. While they dreamed of touchdowns, I dreamed of infrastructure. "You're too soft for this game," Dad told me after I fumbled away my starting position. "Some boys are made for football, some aren't. Question is, what are you made for?" I never answered him then. I was too afraid the answer would disappoint him even more. Now, 20 years later, I know what I was made for. I was made to see what others couldn't see, to believe in the possibility of change when everyone else had given up hope. I was made to write grant proposals at midnight, to spend weeks researching soil composition reports and environmental impact studies, to fight for communities that had forgotten how to fight for themselves. Below me on the field, a maintenance crew is setting up for some kind of event. They move with purpose, each person knowing their role in creating something larger than themselves. It reminds me of my own work. Quiet, methodical, invisible to most people, but essential to the whole. Rosie wanders down toward the field, following the scent of something interesting in the grass. She's fearless in the way that only rescued animals can be, trusting that whatever comes next will be better than what came before. Maybe that's what I need to learn from her. Maybe it's time to trust that stepping into the light won't burn me alive. That evening, I find myself at Bennett's Auto Repair, drawn by the warm glow spilling from the open bay doors. Tyler is under the hood of an old Chevy, his movements efficient and practiced. When he sees me approaching with Rosie, he wipes his hands on a rag and reaches into a small refrigerator. "Beer?" he asks, holding up 2 bottles of Lone Star. "Sure." We settle on a pair of overturned crates outside the garage, watching the sun sink toward the horizon. The air smells of motor oil and cooling metal, familiar scents that take me back to afternoons when we were 17 and thought we had all the answers. "Heard about Thanksgiving," Tyler says after a long silence. "Your dad was always hard on you. Some things never change." He takes a long pull from his beer, choosing his words carefully. "Ethan, I owe you an apology for how we treated you in school, for not speaking up when kids called you names. Hell, for being one of the kids who called you names." I'm not sure what to say. The hurt from those years feels distant now, like a scar you forget about until someone touches it. My old man used to beat the softness out of me too, Tyler continues. Every time I showed interest in anything besides football or cars, he'd find a way to shut it down. Told me men don't have feelings, don't show weakness, don't back down from a fight. I remember. Thing is, I envied you. Even when we were mocking you for caring about books and town planning and all that other stuff. You had the courage to be yourself, and the rest of us were too scared to even try. Tyler pulls out his phone and shows me a picture of a girl, maybe 13, with bright eyes and paint-stained fingers. This is my daughter Emma, wants to be a graphic designer. Lives and breathes art. His voice carries a pride I never heard when we were kids. Few months ago she came home crying because some boy told her art was stupid, said she'd never make any money doing it. What did you tell her? I told her about you. About how you left this place to build something meaningful, even when people said you couldn't. How sometimes the bravest thing you can do is refuse to be what other people expect. He looks at me directly. This town needs more people like you, Ethan. People who see possibility where others see problems. Rosie wanders over and rests her head on Tyler's knee. He scratches behind her ears, his touch gentle despite his calloused hands. Javier told me about the town hall, he says. I think you should do it, not for revenge, not to prove anything to your dad, but because Emma and kids like her need to see that there's more than one way to be successful in this world. The evening air grows cooler, and somewhere in the distance, a train whistle echoes across the prairie. Tyler's words settle over me like a blanket, warm and unexpected. For the first time since I arrived, I don't feel alone. I return to the house on Saturday morning to gather my things, hoping to avoid another scene. But Dad is waiting for me in the kitchen, nursing a cup of coffee that's probably gone cold hours ago. His eyes are bloodshot, his usually pristine appearance rumpled and tired. We need to talk, he says without preamble. I think we've said enough. Sit down, boy. Something in his voice stops me, not the anger from Thanksgiving, but something rawer, more fragile. I pull out a chair across from him while Rosie settles at my feet. Your mother's been crying for 3 days, he starts. Says I was too hard on you. She's right. Dad stares into his coffee cup like he might find answers there. You know what my father told me when I was your age? He said, a man's worth is measured by what he builds with his own hands, by how well he provides for his family. Simple rules. Clear expectations. Those aren't the only ways to measure worth. Aren't they? His voice cracks slightly. I spent 30 years teaching boys to be men. Won 3 state championships. Sent dozens of kids to college on football scholarships. Built something that mattered. I never said it didn't matter. But it doesn't matter to you. The words come out hollow, defeated. Nothing I ever did mattered to you. You left the first chance you got and never looked back. For the first time, I see past the anger to the hurt underneath. Dad, I didn't leave because of you. I left because I needed to find out who I was supposed to be. And what did you find? Some fancy nonprofit job that pays you to give away other people's money? Before I can answer, Mom appears in the doorway. Her hair is uncombed, her eyes swollen from crying, but her voice is steady and clear. Dennis, stop. Marilyn, this doesn't concern. This concerns all of us. She steps into the kitchen, positioning herself between us. Ethan has spent 10 years helping communities just like ours. He's accomplished something meaningful, something good, and instead of being proud, you tear him down. Dad's face flushes red. I'm trying to teach him. You're trying to break him, Mom says quietly, the way your father tried to break you. But Ethan's not broken, Dennis. He's exactly who he's supposed to be. The silence that follows is deafening. Dad stares at Mom like he's seeing her for the first time in years. I don't know how to be proud of something I don't understand, he admits finally. Then try to understand, she says, before it's too late. I stand up slowly, my heart pounding. I love you, Dad, but I can't keep waiting for your approval. I have to go. As I reach the door, I hear him call my name. When I turn back, his face is crumpled with something that might be regret. I never meant to make you feel small, he says. I know, I tell him, but you did. The town hall is packed beyond capacity, folding chairs crammed into every available space in the community center. I sit in the back row with Rosie at my feet, watching faces I've known my entire life turn toward the podium where Javier stands. My hands are sweating, my heart hammering against my ribs like it's trying to escape. Before we discuss future development plans, Javier says, his voice carrying easily across the room, I want to introduce someone who's already made a significant impact on our community. Many of you remember Ethan Carter. What you don't know is that he's the reason we're all here tonight. Murmurs ripple through the crowd. I see Dad in the third row, his face unreadable. Mom sits beside him, her hands clasped tightly in her lap. Tyler gives me an encouraging nod from across the aisle. Ethan, Javier continues, would you join me up here? The walk to the front of the room feels like crossing an ocean. Every step carries the weight of 34 years. Every face in the crowd a mirror reflecting who I used to be and who I've become. When I reach the podium, my voice comes out steadier than I expected. 10 years ago, I left Millbrook because I felt like I didn't belong here. People told me I was too soft, too idealistic, that I'd never amount to anything. I pause, finding my father's eyes in the crowd. For a long time, I believed them. The room is absolutely silent now. But I learned something important while I was away. Success isn't about being the loudest voice in the room or the strongest person on the field. Sometimes it's about being the person who sees what others can't see, who believes in change when everyone else has given up hope. I tell them about the grant proposals, the late nights spent researching infrastructure needs, the careful work of building coalitions and securing funding. I explain how Millbrook became one of 12 pilot communities in a federal rural development program, how every improvement they've celebrated came from believing their town was worth saving. I didn't do this for recognition, I say, my voice growing stronger. I did it because this place shaped me, and I wanted to give something back. Real leadership isn't about taking credit. It's about making things better, even when no one knows your name. When I finish, the applause starts slowly, then builds like thunder rolling across the prairie. But what matters most is the look on Tyler's daughter's face in the front row, eyes wide with possibility, like she's seeing a different kind of future for the first time. As I walk back to my seat, I catch my father's eye. He doesn't applaud, but for the first time in my life he nods. Just once. It's enough. I leave Millbrook at dawn on Sunday, just as I arrived, quietly, with Rosie beside me and the weight of unfinished business finally lifted from my shoulders. The morning air is crisp and clean, carrying the scent of possibilities I helped plant, but will never see fully bloom. Before heading to the highway, I make one last stop at the youth center that opened 6 months ago. The bronze plaque by the entrance reads, Carter Foundation for Rural Development, Building Futures Together. I run my fingers over the words, feeling the weight of every late night, every rejected proposal, every small victory that led to this moment. Inside the building, a janitor is setting up chairs for what looks like a community meeting. Through the windows, I can see the park where children will play for generations, the walking trails where elderly couples will hold hands in the evening light, the small stage where young voices will learn to speak their dreams out loud. I pull out a piece of paper and write a short note to Javier. Keep building. The foundation is stronger than you think. E.C. I leave it on the reception desk and walk back to my truck. Ooh. As I drive past my childhood home, I see Dad on the front porch, coffee mug in hand, watching the sunrise. He's wearing his old coaching jacket, the one with the faded championship patches. When he sees my truck, he raises his hand, not quite a wave, but an acknowledgement. I slow down and roll down my window. "Drive safe," he calls out. I will. It's not forgiveness, not reconciliation, but it's something. Maybe that's enough. On Main Street, I pass Tyler and Emma walking to the bakery, her sketchbook tucked under her arm like a secret weapon against the world's limitations. She looks up as I drive by and waves with the confidence of someone who's never been told her dreams are too small or too big. The highway stretches ahead of me, wide and welcoming. In the rearview mirror, Millbrook grows smaller but doesn't disappear entirely. It lives now in the space between what was and what could be, in the quiet revolution of people learning to see themselves differently. Rosie shifts in her seat and rests her head on my shoulder, her warm breath steady against my neck. We're heading home, not to the place I left behind, but to the life I've built with purpose and intention. Behind us, the sun climbs higher, casting long shadows that eventually fade into daylight. Ahead, the road hums with promise, and for the first time in my life, I'm not running toward something or away from it. I'm simply moving forward, carrying the quiet knowledge that some victories are measured not in applause, but in the gentle persistence of seeds taking root. Up next, we have 2 more incredible stories that are waiting for you. Just click the image you want to watch, and it will take you there. If you enjoyed this video, make sure to subscribe. It would mean a lot